Here's your weather on the 3s.
All right, everyone, time for a deep dive into the tropics now. A lot of uncertainty with two different systems, but both systems do need to be watched, especially as we get into the weekend, because I think the weekend time frame is when we're finally going to start to see a lot of the answers to some of the questions that we have. And let's start with a run through of the satellite radar picture. You got Hurricane Genevieve, which is breaking up out over in the Pacific right now as it comes down over towards Baja, Mexico. As we get over into the Atlantic, though, a series of storms, tropical depression to 13 in the central Atlantic. You've got another wave coming off of the African coast, and then you've got another wave that's sitting up the Caribbean right now. It's looking pretty good this morning here, kind of a flare-up overnight last night. We'll look for development on this one as it gets a little bit further towards the west. Yesterday, battling back a little bit of drier air, but I think it's starting to tap into some moisture right now, because we're starting to see it flare up. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, as we watch this develop, it will tell us a lot about how this system is ultimately going to go. Right now, the Hurricane Center is still giving it about an 80% chance to develop a little bit, so something to monitor. If it does, it looks like it's going to try and hook up into the Gulf of Mexico. We'll talk about that here in a moment. This is Depression 13. Doesn't look too great today. It looked like there was a lot of convection up over towards the north. I think you've got two different competing centers here, or two different areas that are trying to get these storms going. It's still kind of a big, broad, messy system, and it means that the models are going to struggle in figuring it out as we go forward through the next couple days until it can tighten up a little bit. It will be interesting to see how some of the model runs start coming in now that they actually have a depression to latch onto. Still looking at an 80% chance of development there in the northwestern Caribbean. I think if it does do so and it does develop, it will get picked up by a trough that's swinging through, and that could hook it up into the Gulf of Mexico and pull it this way just a little bit. I think anyone from the Mississippi Gulf Coast all the way through into central Texas needs to monitor this storm. Now, it's a wide area, and that speaks to the uncertainty that we have. You can see how widespread the different model runs are. I think a weaker, more open wave is going to skirt southwards and probably going to work its way across the Bay of Campeche into Mexico. I think the stronger the storm is and the more developed it is, the more likely it is to get into the Gulf of Mexico. We may be looking at a tropical storm Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe. And again, there's a lot of ifs there as well. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about over the weekend. We'll start to know a little bit more. But you get any system out in the Gulf of Mexico, and then you start to hold your breath a little bit just with how warm the waters are out there right now. So again, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be watching over the next couple days. Tropical Depression 13 is a slightly different story because the time frame on everything is that much longer. I mean, it's still got to get up through the Caribbean, get over towards Florida, and it's not going to even get to the Gulf of Mexico by the time we get to early Tuesday morning out there. I think in the next 24 hours, you are going to see this system become Tropical Storm Laura. You should see it tighten and organize a little bit. This area a little more conducive for some development. Then it hits the islands, and it depends where this system goes, which will determine what's going to happen when it does get into the Gulf of Mexico. If it interacts with a bunch of land, then you're going to see a weaker system get into the Gulf. If it threads the needle the way that this track kind of goes, you've got a potentially stronger storm that does get in. And again, everyone from Florida all the way through Louisiana, maybe even into Texas, needs to be monitoring this storm. This is it. This is the peak of hurricane season. It is going to be this way for quite a while. I've kind of been talking about how this had been an abnormal year so far, that it had been so active so early, and now we're starting to get into the peak. This is historical peaks, and that usually starts right around this time of year, getting on into the middle of September as well. So we got some busy days coming up here for sure along the Gulf Coast. 6:47 right now, temperature is 72 degrees.